I mean, they didn't speak for almost 2 weeks. I mean, I was like, it's fine. She's 14, so.
Dad's like, let me take this VHS into the study. Hold on. What's going on in there, Dad? Nothing.
Gross. That is so.
Nothing.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Helen, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash, the Sand Spider Schlafly.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit us at shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So, thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, you can subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Watchmen, Lovecraft Country, and Ash and I are currently doing American Gods in its third season, the best season in my opinion. Find all that information and our past episodes at shatontv.com. Finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and end each week on Friday at 9 o'clock Eastern with a Shappy Hour cocktail party. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Well, Gene, throughout the near 200 movies we've done here at Shat The Movies, we've been accused of being the John Hughes podcast. We've been accused of being the Bill Paxton podcast. But what we really are is the Arnold Schwarzenegger podcast.
Fact.
And I got to, how many Arnold Schwarzenegger movies do you think that we've done?
7.
Ash?
Well, this is my first, but you guys, I'll go with 6.
This is Arnold number 9 for Shat The Movies. We've done Commando, T2, Conan, T1, Last Action Hero, Jingle All the Way, Predator, Total Recall, Kindergarten Cop, and tonight, one of our awesome listeners, Tom C., decided to add the 9th Arnold movie to our catalog, so he commissioned the 1994 action comedy True Lies.
Well, and Tommy the Pants C wrote in and said, "Greetings, Shat podcasters. I commissioned this movie during the first stages of COVID because I was working at home for the first time in my life, and your podcast made the long days of being stuck in my apartment go by faster. So thank you. I chose True Lies because I wanted to do a movie that nobody has reviewed yet, but it goes deeper than that. True Lies was one of the movies my entire family liked growing up. Its humor and great action still hold up pretty well. It also had one of my childhood crushes, Tia Carrera, as well as Jamie Lee Curtis dancing in her underwear. It was everything a boy of 11 in 1994 could ever want in a movie. I'm interested to hear your take on what I consider Schwarzenegger's last great movie. Thank you so much, and keep it up."
So, Pants, I don't really think that this is Schwarzenegger's last great movie. I think we've established here that he's done many more great movies after this, but this is a pretty great movie. Listener Steve W., who's commissioned like a quarter of the movies we'll be doing in the next year, he contacted me and he's like, "Hey man, what's up with this? You guys have done more Tia Carrera movies than you have Adam Sandler or Robin Williams. What the fuck's up with that?" And I was like, I don't know if this qualifies as a Tia Carrera movie. And then it led me to start thinking about like what makes a movie a blank person's movie. I think they've got to be the main star in it, right? Like this isn't a Tom Arnold movie. This isn't a Bill Paxton movie, right? It's a Schwarzenegger movie.
Yeah, but I do have to agree with Tom C. I think this does mark the end of the great Schwarzenegger era. Because after this, the only thing he did Junior, which I haven't seen it in ages.
Terrible.
I don't know. Eraser, terrible. Jingle All the Way,
great.
Amazing. Terrible. Amazingly terrible. It's fantastic. Batman and Robin, where he was Mr. Freeze. End of Days. The Sixth Day, Collateral Damage. So this might be the end of the Apex Arnold.
We'll see.
Well, True Lies is a 1994 action comedy written and directed by James Cameron. It stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Arnold, Art Malik, Tia Carrera, Bill Paxton, Eliza Dushku, Grant Heslov, and Charlton Heston. It is based on the 1991 French comedy film La Totale. The film follows U.S. government agent Harry Tasker, played by Schwarzenegger, who struggles to balance his life as a spy with his familial duties. Jamie Lee Curtis won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, and the Saturn Award for Best Actress, while Cameron won the Saturn Award for Best Director. The film was the first movie to cost $100 million to make and ultimately grossed $378 million worldwide at the box office. It was nominated at the Academy Awards and the BAFTAs in the Best Visual Effects category and also nominated for 7 Saturn Awards. Big D and Ash, we always ask the question, where were you and what are your memories of this movie? We'll start with you, Big D. What are your memories of True Lies?
So in July of 94, I was in college. And I honestly have no idea the first time I saw it. This is one of those movies, I suspect it was on VHS, probably a Blockbuster rental, but I do not remember the first time I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, I do because it was this week. I had never seen this movie before. And I don't know how that happened because I feel like this type of movie, I saw most of them growing up, like something that was in this genre. And I remember how big this movie was. I'm sure it's probably because of the striptease scene. My parents were weird. They were fine with me watching anything with tons of gore and violence, but anything that even had an iota of like sexuality to it, my mom was like, you know, not for your eyes. So that's most likely why I never watched it at the age of 11. But I remember them really liking it. And I'm a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. I think that he's fantastic. And so I had pretty high hopes for watching this one.
How would your parents know if there was going to be a nude scene? Would they like preview it? Would they go to isthisproblematic.com? How would they know?
Well, I mean, they typically would see it first, right? And then they either would take me back to go see it with them in the theater, like we did with Speed. That's how I got to see Speed, is they saw it, and there was lots of, you know, the word fuck, but no fucking in Speed. So I got to go see it. And then this one, I guess, you know, the striptease scene, I already was a dancer. Maybe they thought I'd go the wrong way. I don't know.
Was your dad like, I'm not too sure about the movie. Let me go back and check again. I'm going to go alone this time, okay?
It was mostly my mom. Mostly my mom, not my dad. But with this one, maybe, because she's hot.
I'm glad you clarified that, Ash, because I wanted to point out that your dad was like, hey, Species with the tentacle rape and the big
Yes.
big-titted woman falling out of a chrysalis. Yeah. That's fine. Jamie Lee Curtis in her underwear.
No. Biggest fight my parents literally have ever gotten into, because my mom is way too Southern to actually fight with people. Biggest fight they ever got into was the fact that my mom found out that my dad and I went to go see Wild Things together with Denise Richards and Nev Campbell, and she heard about the threesome scene. They didn't speak for almost 2 weeks. I mean, I was like, it's fine. She's 14, you know, so.
Dad's like, let me take this VHS into the study. Hold on. What's going on in there, Dad? Nothing.
Gross. That is so.
Nothing.
I like that the dude who's seen his own dad beat off is bringing up Dad's beating off. I think you might be scarred, Big D.
Very true.
Yeah, I had kind of the opposite experience, Ash, where my mom, when I was a teenager, so I grew up without a dad, but I had this older cousin, Pej, who's 12 years older than I am. My mom raised him as well. And she's like, well, he could kind of be like a male role model for you. So in my teen years, Pej would come up with these awesome like trip ideas, like guy trips, right? So it was guy trips for like Iranians. So it's like, we're going to go to San Francisco and go to Napa Valley and taste wine. And we're going to go to New York City and eat and buy suits and eat at all the best restaurants. That's manly stuff, right? But we'd go and explore these cities and learn about like, you know, good steak and wine and hotel lobbies and hangouts and like cool cars to go to car shows all over the country. And on one trip, we were in the hotel. This was in California, and we had just come back from dinner, opening up a bottle of wine, and he's like, I obviously couldn't drink it at this point. I was 14, but he was opening up a bottle of wine, and this Arnold movie comes on cable. And he's like, oh, what's this about? And so we're just sitting in our respective beds, and within minutes, we were glued to the screen. And this like quickly became a bonding moment and a lasting memory for me. I would always remember this trip and watching True Lies together. So yesterday, it was his birthday, and I went over to my mom's house. He still lives with my mom, and we were hanging out. And I'm like, hey, man, for Shat The Movies, which she doesn't know what it is, we're covering True Lies. Isn't that awesome? He's like, what's True Lies? It's a True Lies, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie with Simon. He's a used car salesman, all that stuff. He says, I've never seen that movie. So I showed him the trailer, and he's like, no, I don't know. The Harrier shows up on screen. He's like, oh, fuck yeah, this movie's awesome. And I was like, and you gotta remember, guys, like, if dudes are, no offense, Big D, you're not there yet, but when dudes hit their 50s, they will remember one part of a whole thing, and you have to find that part to trigger their memory. Ash, let this be a lesson to you. Tom, Big D, it's coming. It's coming.
Well, I think the hard drive, once it maxes out, you got to start rewriting over some of the early data. So I think that's what's going on.
All right. Well, on that note, let's see what we all remember from True Lies. Big D, hit the trailer.
How'd it go at the convention, honey?
You were the big hit of the show. It's fantastic. I love the computer business.
For 15 years, Harry Tasker's been leading a double life.
Mr. President, one of our best men is inside.
Transmitting now.
Right on time.
I don't believe I've met you before.
Rehnquist. Harry Rehnquist.
Listen to the following code word. Helen. Helen.
Now, they're about to collide.
What's your exit strategy?
I'm gonna walk right out of that front gate.
May I see your invitation, please?
Sure. Here's my invitation.
Yeah, that worked good. Right out the old front gate.
Can you lean back a second?
Mr. Tasker's office.
Hi, it's Helen. Is he in?
Harry's in a sales meeting, Mrs. Tasker.
It's not like he's saving the world or anything.
I see, this is the problem with terrorists. They're really inconsiderate when it comes to people's schedules. Could you press the button for the top floor, please?
Hi, Helen. Harry forgot something back at the office.
Whenever I can't sleep, I just ask him to tell me about his day. 6 seconds and I'm out.
Maybe it's just that you're not in touch with your feminine side.
Harry! What were you doing here?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you. You know what this is? It's a snow cone maker. Is it a water heater?
From James Cameron, director of Aliens and T2, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It's a Soviet Mirv 6 from an SS-22N launch vehicle.
I married Rambo.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Have you ever killed anyone?
Yeah, but they were all bad.
True Lies.
What can I say? I'm a spy.
Harry Tasker appears to be a mild-mannered computer salesman, but secretly works as a secret agent. Harry and Omega Sector agents Albert Gibson and Faisal infiltrate the party of suspected arms dealer Jamal Khaled in Switzerland. Harry and his team learn that American antiques dealer Juno Skinner, played by Tia Carrera, received a suspicious payment from Jamal. Harry visits her office undercover and discovers that they are really members of a terrorist group known as Crimson Jihad, led by Salim Abu Aziz. Aziz follows Harry to a shopping mall and attempts to kill him. Harry survives, but misses his birthday party.
So we've already talked a little bit about Arnold, and I think that this is not an opinion, but just a fact that Arnold is just a consummate action star. Like, that's what he was born to be. He's a badass, but I'm used to seeing him as like either a military dude, like in Predator, or like a robot in Terminator, which I feel like lends itself to the type of acting he does. Here, though, he's like this James Bond type, like suave spy. And I laughed out loud immediately at the thought that this would work for him, because he walks into this building, into this beautiful mansion, and he's literally the biggest dude in the room. Like, you can't help but notice him, and everybody's staring at him. And then he starts to speak French, and part of my soul died, because I did not know that French could ever sound as ugly as it does coming out of his mouth, but I was willing to let it go. And then another piece of my soul died when he starts to tango. I mean, the man, he moves like a big old redwood tree trunk that's suffering from tree rot. Like, it just doesn't work well. And I just don't know about you guys, but I buy him so much more as like that military type of action star than this one.
But no, I think we've talked about it, that a lot of his movies don't even address his accent. Like, I think it's Jingle All the Way, where he's like, I am a typical American dad. Like, they don't even address that when he's Turbo Man. Nobody's like, hey, Turbo Man's German all of a sudden, or Austrian. So I like the fact here, he's not going to blend into the room. He physically will never blend in, but he does a little peacocking. So he comes in, he's controlling the situation. He's showing that he speaks multiple languages. He's saying hello to people, and they're like, who was that? He is hiding in plain sight. I think that's the only way they could have done it, and I love it because he owns it.
Yeah, apparently all it takes to infiltrate any gathering is a scuba suit and being multilingual. Like, Harry walks in, the cook's like, hey, who the fuck is this guy? He's like, I speak Frenchish. And of course the cooks are French, And then he finds a security detail guy who's asking him why he's where he is, and he just starts speaking Arabic. Guys, this is not how language works. Just because you speak a language doesn't mean everyone else who speaks that language automatically believes you.
Well, and one of the funniest things I've ever seen done with subtitles is when he starts speaking in Arabic, it doesn't just say in Arabic, it says in perfect Arabic. Like, so that for those of us out there that are white, that, hey, this is good Arabic, right? I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. And I think that you're right, though. I mean, especially the French. I lived in France for a while, and this was the biggest thing, I think, in the movie that is unrealistic, because the French would first be stopping to judge how terrible his accent is, and maybe not even speak to him. And then when he insults the French cook for not eating enough garlic, like, there'd be a fight here. I think the French guy would have been a little bit more spicy than he is here.
Once we get through this part, we're introduced to Harry, we're introduced to Al, the team. Then we find out that he's not just a spy, he's an undercover spy in Omega Sector. How could you manage your life? It is hard enough to have a job, a family, a wife, balance your time, and not be a spy and have to hide everything. And I found myself thinking about the dudes who have second families. Like, it's found out that they have kids, a wife, a job, a whole friend group in another city. How did they pull that off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be a relic of a bygone era, because I think in 2021, this is incredibly difficult. In 1994, I mean, you don't have social media. It's a lot easier. Like, back then, the phone was basically the only way to check on someone, or stopping by their office, right? So you could just say, I was in a meeting, or I missed your call. And Harry's pulling it off without being particularly smart, because I think we see in this movie, he is like no tactical genius. He might know things about nuclear warheads, but he sees that he's being followed by what he suspects might be, terrorist cell or some bad guys. And his solution is, let's go set up an ambush at the mall, and I'm going to be the bait. So you're going to go to a place where there's tons of civilians instead of leading the Crimson Jihad guys to like an ambush point. Here's the thing. He's not chasing them. They're chasing him. So he has to determine where this fight takes place. And his solution is, follow me into the mall bathroom. I'm going to stand at the urinal with my back to the door and no cover at all, just so I get to use my cigarette camera, so I can see what's going on behind me. And remember, the whole point here is to take one of these dudes alive so that you could figure out what they're all about. This is a terrible plan.
But remember, this is directed by Cameron, who did T2. This whole scene in the mall, it's an homage to other Arnold movies. The big Persian guy comes in. That is the Persian Arnold. He's wearing the field jacket. He's wearing the glasses from Terminator 1. And we see the security camera, the black and white. A lot of those little pieces are supposed to make us think of and remember T1 and the T2 shootout with the T-1000.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't read that deep into it. All I just kept thinking about was that poor guy, that old man in that stall, that he's dead. Like, there's no way that they shoot this many bullets in that bathroom shoot up scene and that he doesn't end up just dead on the floor.
Well, those are American-made steel stalls, man. Right. No bullets going through them. And that guy had no sense of self-preservation. He didn't hit the deck or anything. He just sat there with his newspaper oh.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I guess this is when I got the idea that we're supposed to be bending the reality here. Because I thought this, looking at the poster, knowing what you know about Arnold, I thought this was a legit serious action film. when I went into it, and then realized very quickly that it's not. And there's so much reality bending that you have to do. And actually, Gene, you had texted me, you're like, just remember, you have to pretend like physics don't exist when you watch this movie to enjoy it. And I'm really glad you gave me that advice, because I had messaged you guys that I was getting nervous after the big horse sequence. So for those of you that haven't seen it in forever, Arnold goes chasing after Aziz, who's on a motorcycle, by taking a horse and riding this horse through the streets after Aziz. And y'all, I mean, I'm sorry. I just kept looking at it going, is this really happening right now? And I did not know this, but apparently this almost killed Arnold Schwarzenegger in real life, because the horse got to the edge of a drop off. It obviously isn't the top of a skyscraper like it is in the movie, but it was like a 90-foot drop, and the horse reared up and Arnold fell off and almost fell the 90 feet. And wouldn't it have been so tragic for him to die as the result of such a stupid It's such a stupid sequence. And more so than that, I think James Cameron is just that director that's like, this is a good cut. So I'm, fuck it. I don't care that there's a stunt double here, because there's 3 extended sequences where clearly it is a very skinny dude on the horse that is very white and younger than Arnold that looks nothing like him. And Cameron just doesn't give a fuck. He just lets him go so that he can get the whole scene of the horse jumping. And I'm going, wow, that's really not Arnold Schwarzenegger here.
You forget about the Arnold double. What about Aziz's double? They gave that dude like a giant prosthetic forehead. That's the only thing you can see as he's jumping.
And the wig.
You gotta remember though, the 90s action films, they all followed the exact formula. And I was glad, thankfully, True Lies dares to take some chances. Okay, I don't remember ever another movie where they're like, okay, we're gonna have a horse chase a motorcycle through the hotel. They're gonna get in matching glass elevators. It was imaginative, it was fun, and the dialogue is the kicker. Because as it's going on its own, if we were taking it serious, you could say, oh, this is stupid. But when he's in the chase, Harry's talking to Al on the radio and he says, you have to make it quick. My horse is getting tired. That shit is great. Or they go into the elevator, and obviously the horse would not fit in that elevator. And the ass is going into an older couple, into the woman's face. She's like, say something. He's like, that's a fine animal. These conversations are showing us, hey, don't take it too serious. And it's finished with the horse that almost kills Arnold when he's like, what are you doing? You let him get away. We had him. And the horse kind of shakes his head. He's disappointed. It was a great change from all the other shit that we've seen rehashed.
What kind of cop are you? Yes. And the best part about it is they keep pushing the limits, then they'll yank us back. So in this scene, I'm like, oh, fuck, he's going to jump this horse. Like, this horse is going to jump. I was convinced that this horse is about to plunge to its death. But yeah, this scene clearly is not meant to be taken seriously. I'm glad everyone appreciates that fact. And also, we get to see Arnold very self-aware, which is what gives him his magic, right? He knows how funny it is to give that Arnold death glare between 2 slowly moving elevators while he's on top of a horse saying, I'm sorry, to a couple. Like, it's perfect. And if you don't laugh at this, I'm sorry. You don't want to laugh. Well, Harry heads to his wife Helen's office and overhears her talking on the phone to a man named Simon. Harry taps Helen's phone, learning that Simon is a used car salesman who pretends to be a covert agent to seduce women. Harry and other Omega agents intimidate Simon into staying away from Helen. Using a voice changer, Harry interrogates Helen and learns that she is desperately seeking adventure. He arranges a staged spy mission where she is to plant a covert listening device in the hotel suite of a mysterious figure who is actually Harry himself. Aziz's men suddenly burst in, abduct the couple, and take them to an island in the Florida Keys.
So I think we have to say that Harry is the worst husband out of all the husbands we have ever seen in a movie. He is terrible. I think he's horribly abusive. I mean, first, he's obviously completely emotionally unavailable. And not just because he's a spy, but also because he's terrible. He neglects his family wholeheartedly. And then he has the audacity to be upset that his super hot wife is choosing to seek comfort elsewhere. Then he tortures her. He terrifies her. He continues to lie to her. I mean, y'all, Helen deserves so much better. He makes her think that she's about to be raped by this dude in the room. I mean, I am team Helen, and I think she should have divorced him.
Well, we're going to get into this later, but I think Helen is a perfect match for Harry. And later on, I'll show you why I think she is the perfect pair. But Arnold's made a career out of being shitty dads. You're making it sound like this is the first time. How many kids has he forgotten about? How many kids has he ignored? Jingle All the Way, he's never home on time. He doesn't get the fucking Turbo Man or Booster Doll. This isn't the first time he's done it. When he doesn't make it home for dinner, I'm like, oh shit, we're in for the same old repeat again. But again, the movie surprises you. They have Al serve as the voice of reason throughout the whole movie. Anytime Harry's a shitbag, Al calls him out on it. When Harry complains about any situation, Al puts him in his place. He complains about Dana, that she's kind of going down the wrong path. She's stealing money. He says, you don't even know how old she is. About the cheating, he says to Harry, she's flesh and blood. You're never there. It's a matter of time. What did you expect? And then Simon, who he's now focusing his anger on, he said, I think you're going about this the wrong way. Women like you to talk to them. And about the job, he says, you can't do this. You can't wiretap your wife. You can't pull assets off and surround and abduct your wife. It's a violation of every protocol. So as bad as Harry is, the movie provides us with the angle that we should not be looking what Harry does as a good thing.
Yeah, it's 1994 where Tom Arnold could tell you about being a good husband.
Well, and I did love Tom Arnold in this. I know that this was the blacklisted part of his career, and he credits Cameron and Schwarzenegger for kind of giving him a rebirth. And apparently they're all still really, really close friends, which is kind of precious. But as good as Tom Arnold is, nobody in this movie, nobody can hold a candle to Bill Paxton. I was not sold on this movie at all until Simon showed up. I don't think that Bill Paxton, who I've loved in so many things, I don't think he was ever better again than he was in this movie. I laughed out loud at every scene he was in. He brings it into this weird genre that I don't think most action movies kind of delve into. And the plot line of a guy pretending to be a spy to get chicks, that's hilarious. And Paxton, he looks great. And I forgot how funny he is, because I remember him mostly from Big Love in his later career where he's not funny. I mean, he's so fantastic in this movie.
And he manages to play the role three distinct different ways. He's slimy while he's planning his little ruse. He's pathetic at the same time, and he's self-aware at how pathetic he is, and that he's got a tiny dick, and it's pathetic and would a spy pee. But he's also cocky at the same time. When he's got Harry for the test drive, it is one of the best scenes in the movie. And he's bragging about his conquest with women. He's like, she could suck start a leaf blower. Oh, she's got an incredible body. That pair of titties. Oh, make me want to sit up and beg for buttermilk. Ass like a 10-year-old boy. And the camera the entire time is zooming in slowly on Harry's face until the rage grows. And he just knocks out Simon. And I mean, it's one of the most gruesome scenes. His blood out, his teeth are kind of fucked up. But thankfully, it's only a misdirect. But the movie's got so many things going, so many different layers. I could not take my eyes off the screen.
Yeah, Bill Paxton in that scene is like laying halfway across the two-seater roadster. Like he's basically almost in Harry's lap at this point. He's just like heads flying back like a Muppet. I mean, the physicality, the delivery is just perfect. And this was a smart investment. Like a lot of movies would take that role of Simon. If you look at it on paper, it's a throwaway role, right? You see some guy who's like a slimy shitbag and we're going to pick on him. But Paxton takes it and he takes True Lies to another level. Also, Ash, as you mentioned, his costuming is perfect. Those turtlenecks, those fucking like leisure suits. I mean, he looks like a used car salesman who tried to dress up as a secret agent. It's great.
And I love that every character is just digging the knife further into Harry's back. When the helicopter is surveilling like them driving in the vet, and he's like, oh yeah, yep, she's got her head in his lap. Mm-hmm, yep. And what does Al say? Oh, maybe she's sleepy.
Yeah, and Harry's solution to all of this, despite meeting this guy face to face, despite being able to talk to his wife at the dinner table, does he try to solve it in any sort of civilized way? No. He is more interested in pulling off a great prank than preventing his wife from being plowed by this womanizing fraud. So remember, at this point in the movie, Harry knows that Simon's a fake. He knows that his wife's going to be rendezvousing with Simon. he knows that there is a chance that Simon, the fake. So I'm not saying it's wrong for your wife to cheat on you and you should like go kick the dude's ass. What I'm saying is, the guy is not what he's presenting himself to be to her, and you're not trying to protect her from being exploited. Instead, you got to take time to get the choppas and multiple teams of agents. You got to get all your tactical gear on. You got to get your vest just right, get your mic just right, put your ski mask on, full outfit changes. Like, Harry, Carlos the Jackal could be in Helen's butt right now, but you're, too busy getting the gang together. And I just want to know where this detail-oriented strike was when Crimson Jihad was involved, right? They're tailing you. You go to the mall on a whim. Here, your wife is in danger, and you got to get everybody together, get the vans, set up a whole scene.
You telling me when we have like the congressional investigation into the nuclear explosion in Key West, that all of Harry's misappropriation of assets isn't going to come up? Well, so did we miss them bringing in the nuclear weapons because you were trailing a Corvette with Simon, a used car dealer who was having sex with your wife? He's going to be in all kinds of shit. And I was hoping at this moment, because we've had Al as the voice of reason, I said, they're going to give Harry a chance to redeem himself. During the interrogation, Helen says, I wasn't fulfilled. I felt like, I hadn't lived. We were young when we got married. She says she still loves Harry. So Harry knows what she wants and how he could fix it. He knows the error of his ways. Helen says, I just want honesty. I need to be trusted. And instead of actually taking that advice and saying, hey, I'm a spy, get all hot and bothered, let's go home and bang, she'd probably love it. He plays another game and does the abduction. Harry just doesn't learn.
Yeah, but this is intentional, right? So the conversation that he has with her through the two-way mirror during the interrogation, they're framing it as literally the conversation he should be having with her in their bedroom, right? He's having the right conversation. He's asking the right questions. Do you love me? Were you sleeping with this guy? All the things that are valid questions and a valid conversation to have. He's just doing it in the absolute wrong way. It makes it more fun. It's for our benefit, right? It's not good for their relationship, but we really enjoy it. And another thing I really enjoyed was that a lot of movies we've watched like to end the scene on the punchline. And when a joke doesn't hit and you end a scene on it, it leaves you feeling empty. We see that all the time in 80s movies. True Lies does this on occasion, but most of the best jokes in this movie, as you guys have pointed out brilliantly, are quietly tucked into the rest of the scene. When Arnold or Tom are arguing next to the car about what they should do next about Simon, Arnold just smashes the window, but they don't stop the scene. That's not the joke. They keep going. When Simon is describing husbands that neglect their wives, and Arnold just says, those idiots, they don't stop it there. They keep going with the scene. Helen, at one point when they're abducting her, gets straight whacked in the head with a submachine gun, and they just keep going. The scene rarely stops for the joke. It is go time all the time. This movie never lets up.
Well, and I feel like this movie constantly genre hops. It's almost like it was written as 4 movies, like the scripts got combined into one film, because you have these interludes that build the characters in ways, specifically the female characters, which I really appreciated, because those often, look at Tequila Sunrise, right? Michelle Pfeiffer is like a Cracker Jack box. She's nothing in that movie with the amount of development that she gets. But here the women really get a lot of these own special moments. And obviously the most famous scene that I was waiting for in this was Jamie Lee Curtis doing her striptease. And Big D, you had texted me a couple times, are you there yet? Are you there yet? Because that's where people are, waiting to get in this movie. And y'all, it was not disappointing. Jamie Lee Curtis is smoking in this movie. Her body is absolutely insane. And then it could have just been played as sexy housewife, that's just been, put down and this is who she really is, but she isn't. So, she doesn't lose that awkwardness, her innate personality, because when the chip falls out of her cleavage or when she falls backwards off the bed when she's trying to be sexy, all of that gives her all of this dimension and this idea that she's this smoke show underneath and she needs acknowledgement and she needs her own life, but she's also just who she is, and she's a mom too, and she's middle-aged, and we don't see that really often in the 90s, much less even today. And I think Helen's probably one of my favorite characters of any action movie I've ever seen, and I just want to say again that Harry deserves none of her.
So for the first half of the movie, she looks like Lane Meyer's mother from Better Off Dead. Oh, hi, dear. She looks like this awkward, insecure. She's an average looking housewife. When she just goes to the vase and wets her hair, I was like, oh my, she looks completely like a different person. And I'm glad that you said, Gene, that she was acknowledged with the Golden Globe for her performance, because when she flips that switch to sexy, confident, I felt like I was watching Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot. This is a great performance that cannot be understated.
Well, I mean, the other thing, too, is like the sight gag here when she comes into that hotel after they tell her to dress sexy and she looks like a depressed clown.
Yes,
in that weird
that's exactly what I wrote down. Depressed clown.
Right, in this black tulle. I was like, oh, this is what she's going to strip out of? Like, I was really disappointed. But you're right, Big D. She rips it off. She wets her hair. I mean, she's a MILF before MILF was a thing.
Simon's description of her is spot on.
She has an ass like a 10-year-old boy.
Oh, God, legs that go for days. She could suck star leaf blower.
Well, Aziz reveals he has smuggled nuclear warheads into the country and threatens to detonate them in U.S. cities unless the U.S. leaves the Persian Gulf. He also plants one of the warheads on the island to prove his threats are credible. Aziz orders the couple to be tortured, and Harry reveals details of his double life as a spy to Helen. They escape, and Harry leaves Helen to attack Aziz's men. Helen is captured by Juno and taken in her limo on the overseas highway. Harry is rescued by Omega agents and pursues the convoy, sending 2 Marine Harrier jump jets to stop it. Helen and Juno fight for a gun in the limo, and the driver is shot and killed. Harry rescues Helen through the limo sunroof as it falls into the sea.
So often there are certain topics that you figure, okay, they're not going to make a joke about, like, let's say cancer, a scene about like a kid in a cancer ward, or somebody with AIDS, or maybe nuclear Armageddon, nuclear terrorism. But they go there. Aziz is in the middle of making this Crimson Jihad manifesto, like videotape. Camera pans, and you see the cameraman starting to sweat. And you're like, okay, what's going on? And then you just see the low battery blinking. The guy finally says, oh, the battery's dead. Aziz goes back to his big speech. And I'm like, I'm being cheated. Gene better tell us what the hell this guy was saying, because it looked passionate.
Yeah, Big D, much to many an ex-girlfriend's father's chagrin, I can't speak Arabic. Oh. But as an Iranian American, I can definitely hear a bad accent. So I know what Arabic is supposed to sound like, much like Ash knows what French is supposed to sound like, but she also speaks French. I am pretty sure this was mostly added post-production, because like the audio that's coming out of these guys doesn't match the scenes at all. And second, it's really poorly done. I'm pretty sure these are like Americans who speak Arabic getting on microphones somewhere in a studio somewhere and just giving them these chants. But yeah, I like you really wanted to know, because Big D, you and I think the danger here is that they knew people like you and I will watch these and then agree with the bad guys' manifesto. We're like, well, they got a point there. Yeah. I mean, we are attacking them from afar and killing their women and children, and we have the nerve to call them terrorists. Well, they're kind of right.
Well, yeah, I mean, didn't the British call the revolutionary soldiers terrorists because they wouldn't go stand in the field in a line and fire at each other? So one group's patriot is another's terrorist. I'm not condoning Crimson Jihad, just trying to make that clear. I'm just saying, I get what they're saying. Well,
while we've got the impassioned speech going, Harry proves to be a terrible husband again when he leaves Helen to kind of fend for herself out there. And I felt really badly for her. And then the movie doesn't disappoint because they make you laugh again. In any other film, I would have thought this was absolutely ridiculous, but they earned gags like this in this movie when she has the Uzi and it falls out of her hands, and each step it hits, it fires more and kills all of the terrorists. And she's just standing there screaming, dodging the bullets. I thought it was really funny. And Jamie Lee Curtis milks it. I think it's another really amazing moment in this movie that actually has nothing to do with Arnold. And I realized at this point in the movie that I had honestly forgotten that Arnold Schwarzenegger was the lead character of this movie by this point, because I didn't care anything about his character. I cared about Tom Arnold. I cared about Bill Paxton. I cared about Jamie Lee Curtis. I cared about the guy who plays Aziz. The secondary characters in this are so incredibly strong, which again is really atypical for an action movie.
But I think, Ash, we get another sense here that Helen is a wolf in sheep's clothing. In the beginning, she's the frumpy housewife who's really a smoke show. We're led to believe here that Helen is this good suburban housewife. I think there's a whole nother side to her that we start to see here. When Harry admits, yes, I've killed a lot of people, but they were all bad, she's not disgusted. She's not shocked. She kind of likes it. And a few minutes later, she has the chance to kill a whole group of these guys. Does she object to it? Does she try to hide? No, she does it and then gleefully smiles and comes over to Harry and like kisses him. I think she's as immoral as he is. And when they get together at the end, spoiler alert, I think they're a perfect pair and very much alike.
And as that submachine gun is falling down the stairs and killing all the guys, you see Helen kind of fling her arms up and do the typical thing that women do in 90s movies. But before anybody calls this movie out for like making Helen helpless or something like that in these gunfight scenes, it's not like she and Harry go out shooting on the weekends. If your first trigger pull in your life is on a submachine gun in a life or death situation, fuck, I'd act the same. I'd be like, oh, fuck, what the fuck was that? If you've never fired a gun, guys, it feels like a living thing in your hands. You're never ready for it until the moment you actually do it.
But I found myself also wishing that we'd had better terrorists, just slightly with a better plan. I don't know what their thought was. So they had 4 nukes. We kind of saw the 4 horsemen when Harry was doing his tour. They were there. So we know they got the nukes to Washington. Why would you take all 4 to the Keys? Why wouldn't you just leave one there? And the Keys, they're the worst location possible. There is one bridge in and out. So you can't escape. It's impossible. And they pour concrete on top of the warhead, which I like, but concrete takes a full day to set. You know, they found the transmitter in Helen's purse. Does that make them say, holy shit, the Omega sector knows we're here. They're going to come find us. They still take their time fucking with Harry. And I think if they'd been a little better terrorists, they could have been very effective.
So now you're sympathizing with the terrorists and you're saying you wish they were better at terror.
I think this movie might have radicalized me.
That's possible. But, Big D, you point out Aziz is a fuck up. Yeah. He flat out tells Juno, mistakes will not be tolerated. But he is a colossal fuck up at everything. I think we're meant to understand with the video battery thing running out, with all these guys just getting killed with their own weapons all the time. These guys are just really bad at terroristing.
Yeah, and at the rate that he loses them to getting killed, he's probably got to replace them with lower qualified terrorists and henchmen. But we finally, Gene, it finally happened.
Yes.
How many times have we complained about someone using a rocket or a missile, a shoulder-mounted missile, where we said the backblast is going to shoot giant flame of molten plastic and everything out the back end? Here we get to see what really would happen. Well, not really, but we get the idea of that bad things would happen, is he tries to shoot the helicopter and he blows the one terrorist out the front of the window and he looks around. I was like, yes, I was cheering again. I was cheering for the terrorist here.
Most of this movie had some pretty high quality effects, but this was great because that guy coming in through the windshield looked like a giant rubber chicken and then they just ran him over. I was dying laughing. I was clapping, but this movie was recognized for its visual effects, and the explosions are terrific. The casting is great. The Harrier jet fight scenes, these Harrier jet scenes for 1994 looked amazing. This is all quality filmmaking. And let's not forget that this is not a B movie. This is not a low budget film. This is James Cameron making the world's most expensive movie at the time. And this attention to detail while being funny is incredible. I was noticing in this scene where Helen is being interrogated and they have her in that room and she's got one heel and one foot has no heel on it. And you can see the attention to detail in the lighting of the room, the angles, the uneven click to match the sound of her one-heeled foot. The Foley work is just fantastic.
Well, and I think a lot of that is because they used a lot of practical effects in this movie. It wasn't all CGI. So like the scene where Jamie Lee Curtis's character, where Helen is hanging off the helicopter, she refused to let a stunt double do that. So like that's really her hanging on like that. She did that stunt and it also happened just randomly to be her birthday that day. And that's why it looks so good, because it's not in front of a green screen. And then the Harrier jets, like they rented 2 of them. It was $100,000 a piece that they spent on them. It was something ridiculous. It's like $2,400 an hour for you to rent one of these things. And so they had 2 of them on set. Other movies starting about this time would have just used CGI jets, and they didn't. And I think that that's one reason why I'm watching it. I was so surprised how this felt so much more modern than a lot of the action movies we watched. It felt like this could have been made, other than maybe like the costuming, it felt like it could have been made, 2 years ago, much less all the way back in 94.
Well, after the warhead left on the island detonates, Harry learns that Aziz has taken control of a Miami skyscraper project and kidnapped his daughter, Dana. Harry commandeers a Harrier, and Faisal poses as part of a news team, providing enough distraction for Dana to steal a bomb control key. Aziz chases Dana onto a tower crane as Faisal guns down a few terrorists, and Harry uses the Harrier's machine guns to kill others. Harry coaxes Dana from the tower crane onto the nose of the Harrier. Aziz jumps onto the fuselage of the Harrier and attacks Harry. Aziz winds up ensnared on the end of one of the plane's missiles, which Harry fires at the terrorist helicopter, killing Aziz and the remnants of his terrorist gang.
Everybody's pretty casual in this movie about the fact that a nuclear bomb's just exploded. I mean, they all stop, they all get out, they get the nice little warning from Tom Arnold not to look at the, initial ignition, the big blast. And Harry and Helen decide, because their eyes are already closed, they're just going to make out. And I'm sitting there going, guys, this is a huge deal. Like the nuclear fallout, the people who maybe couldn't get off the island that are now incinerated, the fact that a fucking nuclear bomb just exploded. Nobody really seems that bothered.
Well, I the first time I must have not been expecting it, because how many times do we see a bomb and it gets deactivated, they get rescued? Hell no. And the movie turns it into a romantic moment. As the bomb is going off in the background, Helen and Harry kiss. Only true lies would have the balls to do that. And that's why it's something special.
And it also had the balls to give us a great villain who is somewhat sympathetic and kind of adorable in his own weird way. So Salim Abu Aziz is the exact right villain for this movie. Like, they call him the sand spider because it sounds scary. The dude's not physically intimidating. He's not super proficient. Big D, you pointed out to me earlier this week that he looks like a Pakistani Andy Kaufman. Yeah, he's not a physical match for Arnold, but he is absolutely nuts and just slightly more adept than the rest of Crimson Jihad, which by default, I guess, makes him the leader. By the way, the guy who plays him, Art Malik, was out of work for 14 months and just looking for anything to do because he owed the British government £32,000 in back taxes. And so he's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And afterward, he said, in his very British way, it was a hoot.
Well, what I love about him is the fact that they went with a terrorist who's supposed to be so super intimidating that has like the hairline of Ron Howard's weird looking brother. Like, it looks almost like they intentionally did like a wig. I mean, he's a strange looking guy. And as soon as he came on screen, I knew who he was going to be because I've seen the image of him riding the missile before so many times, but I had no clue what movie that was from. For some reason, I always thought this was from a film, something like Hot Shots Part 2. Like, I figured that kind of scene would be in a film like that. And I think that's where like my confusion with a lot of this movie, it kind of comes in, because I mentioned it before, but it really is a genre fuck. Like, is it action? Is it comedy? And I, please no, completely don't mind it being both. But I do feel like if there's any critique, it isn't super clear sometimes exactly what it wants to be. I think a movie that is much better at that is like Last Action Hero. Like that kind of parody of a film, I think is stronger, because here it felt almost like they were making fun of action films, but then they would go back to feeling like they were trying to do a comedy. But I did laugh, and I never thought I would laugh at a scene like this because it is so ridiculous. It is so objectively dumb. But I did. It's kind of like Eugene and Ace Ventura. I was sitting there and pausing the film going, why is this funny?
Well, it's funny because you got Arnold Schwarzenegger with a guy stuck on a missile looking over his shoulder while flying a jet that his daughter is basically standing on and saying, "You're fired." And then he fires the missile. It goes through a fucking building. And what does it hit? It's a helicopter with all of Crimson Jihad on it. There's like 13 dudes on that helicopter. It looked like one of those scooters riding through Hyderabad with like, an entire Indian family on it. And then boom. I mean, it's clearly got to be funny.
But I have to go back to the character of Dana. Did she have a moral obligation to do the patriotic thing? She knows there's no way she's getting out of the building. There's no plausible way. She doesn't know Dad's an Omega and a super spy. She doesn't know how incompetent Crimson Jihad is. She's got to think, I'm going to die in this building. Knowing that, doesn't she have an obligation to at least throw the key off the building? Or later to sacrifice herself for the millions of people in Miami, knowing she's certainly going to die?
Well, Ash's head would explode then because it would add an additional genre to True Lies. Like, wait, is this a dramatic tale of sacrifice and a coming of age story? Or is it a comedy? Or is it an action? Or is it a stripper movie?
Well, and nobody's mentioned Elijah Dushku. She would go on to play Faith in Buffy. Love her. Hashtag Team Faith for one season only. And I think that she's really good in this, though. Like, I think that it's such a throwaway role because this is the one role I don't think that they really develop well as her character. She's not in it enough, but in what she's in, she's really good. I bought that she was fucking terrified in this scene in this movie. She looked absolutely horrified, and it's responsibility, Big D. She's like 13 years old. She has no idea she's supposed to sacrifice herself. No way.
A year later, we catch up with the Tasker family. Helen has become an Omega Sector agent. Harry and Helen embark on a new mission together at a formal party where they encounter Simon seducing one of the female guests. Helen and Harry intimidate Simon into fleeing to avoid him jeopardizing their covers, and they start dancing a passionate tango. Gibbs states that he's fed up with being in the van, and he tells Harry that he and Helen are going to be in the van next time.
So Tom Arnold does a great thing at the end of this movie. I just think he's one of the real MVPs of this film. I'll say it again. Arnold, Paxton, Curtis, they just anchor what otherwise could have been a really stupid movie. This is not going to be popular, but I really feel like Arnold really could have been like anybody. I don't think he mattered as much as the supporting cast. And I loved the way that it ended. You've got Arnold complaining. You got Bill Paxton. Thank God he came back. I was so excited to see him again. And then, he pisses himself again. They tango again. I usually hate these callbacks, and I usually hate when movies are wrapped up so well. But here, again, I don't know why, but it was really charming. And I know there was a lot of talk of a sequel. James Cameron talked about maybe, putting this into more of like a television format. And I'm really glad that none of that happened, because I think the world of True Lies, it's wrapped up really well in this ending. And I think it's a charming one, and it left me smiling.
I don't know that you could replace Arnold in this. I think he's the only guy that can deliver those one-liners. And there's those scenes where he's talking with Jamie Lee Curtis over the dinner table, and he's just glaring at her. And that Arnold death glare, no one else does it the way he does. I was going to complain in the first tango scene that they never show Arnold's legs. So I thought it was him that he couldn't dance. But they have no problem at the end here showing Arnold and Jamie Lee Curtis dancing. So I think it turns out Tia Carrere can't dance. And I looked up her IMDb credits and also looked her up on Wikipedia, and it's like actress, singer, and model Tia Carrere. I was like, oh, interesting. They didn't list dancer on her credits, and now we know why.
Yeah, are we going to call him dancing as that he can dance at the end? Because again, he's so damn stiff. I mean, he's like a big old board just moving around. No, but it was charming. It was still charming, though.
Yeah, sorry he doesn't have dance awards, Ash.
Well, not everybody can on a pink resume paper. So sorry you're so jealous.
Exactly.
So I want to clarify that I really enjoyed this movie, but I think in the last 30 minutes or so, I was getting a little saddle sore. Then I started thinking, man, they need to trim this movie down a little bit, is what you would normally do if you feel like a movie's too long. But then I sat down and I thought about every part of the movie. I'm like, you can't cut it shorter.
Nope.
Because what part would you want to miss? All of it is really entertaining. I guess maybe a little less Arnold flying around in the Harrier. That might have gone on for a little too long, but it looked great. So it's hard to say. But really, other than that, I really can't complain about this movie.
Yep.
And now is the time when each of us gives our Shat score for True Lies. The wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes a movie would take to get off your respective bums. 0 wipes is a flawlessly executed tango with Jamie Lee Curtis and Arnold Schwarzenegger in matching finery. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It is Bill Paxton pissing his own pants at the edge of a dam with his micro dick. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your Shat score for True Lies?
So I'll be really honest. I assumed I was going to hate this movie, especially when it started. We talked a little bit about this on Shappy Hour this past week, and everybody also was assuming that I was going to hate this movie. But I didn't. I'll be very honest. I didn't. I could have done without maybe the first half hour. I didn't particularly enjoy the beginning, but the secondary characters in this movie, like I've talked about, completely sold me on it. And here's the deal. For those of you out there who are rolling your eyes if this isn't your genre, it's a stupid movie. It's silly, but just because it is, just because it's stupid and silly, that doesn't make it a bad movie. Like, there's a place for films that are just meant to be fun, that are just meant to be enjoyable and a good time. And that's what this was. It was really endearing because of that. And this is not a Speed, which came out in the same year. This is not a serious action film, but it's also not got enough of like that drama to be like that Lethal Weapon type. It's a genre all its own. I don't think we've ever seen another movie like this, or if there were, they weren't as successful as this one. It's really fun. It's really exciting. And despite myself, I really enjoyed it. I'd watch it again anytime if I could start 35 minutes in. And so I'm going to say that it's not perfect, but way better than average. So I'm giving it 1.5 wipes.
It's funny, Ash, because I also give it 1.5 wipes, but I'd rather miss the end than the beginning. Like, I thought that I could have thrown away the Harrier scenes. Like, basically take the entire skyscraper plot out of it, and you still got a pretty good movie. It just kind of felt tacked on. But to clarify, this movie requires a massive suspension of disbelief, right? Once you get past that part, it's a pretty good movie. That's part of the genre, though. This is an Arnold movie. That is the genre. You know, we're trying to pigeonhole it as action or comedy or whatever. It's not. It's Arnold. It's an Arnold movie. And what do you need for an Arnold movie? You need larger than life happenings. You need really stiff action. Like you said, Ash, he doesn't look fluid doing anything. And you need great one-liners. And the movie had all of that. And then what took it to the next level, as you said, Ash, is just that supporting cast. You put that on top of a regular Arnold movie. And that's what propels this into another echelon. It's really the most fun you can have with 2 hours and 40 minutes. So for me, it's also 1.5 wipes.
I've been going back and forth, even listening to you guys speak, between 0.25 wipes and 0. I can't decide. I'm going to go 0.25. It's not perfect. Okay. But it is nearly flawless. The cast is great. The chemistry between the actors is fantastic. I think they balance the comedy and the action perfectly. And we talked about, I'm glad you said it, Gene, about that it feels long, but then you started to think, what would I cut out? This is one of the few movies that no matter what part I drop in on, say I come in on the second act, right? And I'm seeing the whole Simon bit. I'm going to stick to the end of the movie. If I drop into the beginning, I'm going to stick all the way through. It doesn't matter what part of the movie I jump into. They're equally entertaining. So I think for a 90s action comedy, this took the formula of Last Action Hero and boiled it down and perfected it. Is it, something like, let's say, Sling Blade? No, but that's not the genre. This was the tentpole summer action comedy. The fuck yeah, let's go out and watch shit blow up, turn your mind off. And for that, it is nearly perfect. It is a 0.25 wipe movie.
Yeah, I mean, imagine, Big D, if this had been in the theater, right? You paid your $7 or $8 in the 90s to go see it. You're getting 2.5 hours of incredible entertainment. And you got to imagine the whole theater's losing their shit over this movie. Mm-hmm. I only wish I'd seen it in the theater because it sounds amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So the average with Big D's quarter wipe, Ash's 1.5 wipes, and my 1.5 wipes comes out to 1.083 repeating wipes, a very respectable score for True Lies.
So, Gene, with a score of 1.08 wipes repeating, that now puts this in the 39 spot. It is slightly better than Tremor, Sling Blade, and Seven, and slightly worse than Heat, Coming to America, and Raising Arizona.
Oh, man, we're going to get so much shit.
For what?
I mean, for people who like Seven.
No, it's
people who believe Seven is the greatest movie of all time.
No, but Seven's better. Seven's better.
But it's in the same...
Yeah.
I think you said it was worse.
I know.
What did you say is better than?
I said this movie is slightly worse than.
Yeah.
And then I said Sling Blade, Seven, and
I
Heat.
got it backward.
Yeah, I mean, I think Seven is an absolutely perfect film. So I do think Seven is, but it's so, see, this is what people don't understand is it's so hard. Like, we don't have wipe scores for different genres. Like, we have wipe scores for like the entirety of film. And like, it's very difficult to compare Seven to this. Which one would I rather watch on a Friday night? Probably this one, because Seven is a dark fucking movie that makes you feel like, people are going to murder you in your sleep. But it's sometimes you want to feel like that. I mean, I do. But like, I also think sometimes you got to watch something and make you feel better and laugh. And it just depends on what you want. So
Ash, to all of our listeners and Ash, I'm going to explain what happened with Seven. Roger gave it a 0. I gave it a 0.75. And then the third host said it was an average movie at 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
Who was that third host?
It was.
No, I know.
It was an average
No,
movie.
I know who it was.
Yeah.
I don't think it's average. I think it's a phenomenal movie.
I agree. Totally.
For the thriller crime genre, I think it's a phenomenal movie. But that's okay. You know, it's okay. Jane's wrong sometimes.
Well, we did get a message in actually from a listener. It's just we're talking about kind of the fallibility of the Shat score, although I think it's perfect. We did get a message in from George Jody who said, Shatters, listening to Big D talk about manufacturing a fourth vote via Mathmagic made me think, why don't we just do a listener vote for a collective wipe score worth 25% of the average? It gets to your roots a little with your history of interactive voting, plus get some wisdom from the Ask the Audience vote. Just a thought. Keep up the good work, George Jody.
So here's the thing with that, is that I was talking about this on Shat Hour this week. I can't tell you how many times when people have not liked my wipe score and they've messaged me, I've said to them, how recently have you watched the movie? Mm-hmm. And more often than not, they're like, well, I haven't seen it in years. And see, that's the problem, is that we've had these reckonings. Like, and again, it's not just movies that I hated. It's also movies I loved. I never would have thought I would give Heathers the score that I gave it, or that I would give Valley Girl the score that I gave it based off of what I remembered. Nostalgia glasses are a really big thing. And that's the problem, is I feel like if we did that, you're kind of creating a system where it's going to be so off balance, because if we just went with the score going in that we would assume it would be based off of our childhood experiences, we would have a much different podcast, because it's a rude awakening to watch some of these films 20, 30 years later.
Totally agree, Ash. And I think that dovetails perfectly into the problem I have, is that even with our voting system, we had people trying to hack the voting system. They were going to different computers, resetting their IP. So there's no way to actually get people to vote and that we could guarantee they've seen it. Because if you get 100 people who vote simply on what their memory is, you could throw it all out of whack. And that's why I created the fourth vote, which is an average of the highest, the lowest, and the average of those. So essentially, it's creating a fourth host that agrees with the other two hosts. So it does help balance it.
Also, Ash and I discovered on Friday during Shappy Hour, Fridays at 9 o'clock Eastern, that we are both Greens, and therefore we don't like Democratic anything. The way we do things is the best way to do them. But thank you for your...
always right.
Because we're always right. Thanks, George. Dawn also wrote in and said, no one puts Molly in a corner. I enjoyed your episode regarding 16 Candles, but you broke the unsaid 80s rule. No one bashes Molly Ringwald.
I agree. That's a rule. It seems like it's unspoken.
I think all we were saying about Molly Ringwald was it wasn't her best movie, and she's not that attractive.
That's what they were talking about.
Well, she should have been prettier.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, what do you want?
She is attractively average. If she wet her hair from a vase, she might look like a smoke shop.
You just described her as attractively average. And I believe that's exactly how I described her, was completely average looking. What I said was, I don't understand why she became such a huge sex symbol, because she looks like every girl you pass in the fucking mall by the Orange Julius in the 1980s. Like, she's nothing special.
When she did that movie Four Keeps, where she got pregnant as a kid, a young guy, I was like, oh, I wish I got her pregnant.
What?
You just wanted to get any girl pregnant.
That's
you were not a good litmus test for this, because you've admitted that, like, you didn't get it from anybody. So yeah, you would have been grateful for Molly Ringwald. I'm saying I don't feel like she, I mean, Ali Sheedy's a lot more interesting than Molly Ringwald.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Shue, a lot more interesting than Molly Ringwald.
Of course.
We could keep going.
We also got a message from Amy Girl on Instagram who said, Dear Shat Crew, just listening to your Boogie Nights podcast, and you guys were talking about not doing coke. Funny story, I had a guy invite me to his place for dessert. I rocked up expecting wine and chocolate, and instead he brought out lines of coke. I had to go, thanks, but that's not my thing. I've never tried it, and I don't want to. His reply was, oh, me neither. Dude. If you're offering coke to other people and racking up lines, I kind of think it is. Thanks for another great podcast, Amy Girl.
Just keep it in the pantry with the heroin?
Listen, when I moved back to Arizona, the King Bee told me, he said, hey, dude, let's put some money together. We'll move into a house together. We get like a pool, and we'll become the weed kings of Tempe. I was like, what does that entail? He goes, well, we'll just be like the biggest supplier of weed in the city. Everyone want to come party with us. Chicks are going to fuck us. I was like, it's not cocaine, it's weed. First of all, the chicks that are coming over, I don't think you want to fuck. They're very Molly Ringwald-esque. And secondly, like nobody comes over to your house for a weed party, like doing cannonballs in the pool. It's not fucking boogie nights.
No.
Poor King B.
Thanks to everyone who wrote in. Again, you can write us at host@shatthemovies.com or hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at @shatthemovies. Big D, what movie do we have coming up next week?
Okay, so next week is a commission, which I'm excited to watch. It's something I remember from very early on in my childhood. I was 7 years old when it came out. And one of our listeners, Chris P., commissioned the 1980 American alternate history science fiction war film, which tells the tale of a Pacific aircraft carrier entering a time warp and finds itself transported from 1980 to 1941, just before the attack on Pearl Harbor. The captain is forced to decide whether to strike on the approaching Japanese fleet and change the entire course of World War II. Commissioned by Chris P. It came out in 1980. It is a great movie. And since I think a lot of people won't know what the movie is and won't even know what to Google, I'm going to give you a hint. This isn't in the movie.
Historical films in the 80s about the 40s. They just look, I mean, everything is down to the finest detail.
Oh, it's great. Great.
Well, thank you, Chris, for commissioning the upcoming movie. Thank you, Tommy the Pants, for commissioning True Lies. And thank you to all the commissioners who make this possible. Also, thanks to everybody who joins us on Shappy Hour and is continuing to contribute that way by subscribing to our Twitch stream. That also helps the podcast out a lot. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. You can find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatontv.com. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Ash Schlafly, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
You are on board the USS Nimitz, the most advanced nuclear supership in the American arsenal, carrying a complement of 102 aircraft and 6,000 men. The Nimitz is on routine duty, guarding the waters of the South Pacific.
That Corsair's in real trouble. Stand by to ring the bell.
But within minutes, a bizarre, unexplainable phenomenon of nature will transport the Nimitz 40 years back in time. Back to the day of infamy. Back to the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
My gosh, look at that.
This is the captain. I'm speaking to every man aboard this ship. The storm has had some effect on time, as we know it. It created a portal. A door into another era. Today is December the 7th, 1941. We're about to fight a battle that was lost before most of you were born. This time, God's help, it's going to be different.
There are forces in the universe which we're only now just beginning to understand. There are black holes in space, antimatter, curved space. Things that are as strange to us as electricity would have been to people in the Middle Ages.
Holy cow. It's the whole Japanese fleet.
Our reconnaissance plane has just taken pictures of something that hasn't existed for over 40 years.
What have you got? 2 Japanese zeros, sir.
Splash the zero.
What's happening here? Who are you people?
Oh, don't shoot back off!
Why don't you tell him what's going on here, Commander?
You're an expert on what's going to happen tomorrow. Why don't you tell him about it, for God's sakes? Go on, tell him. We got nothing to lose.
Welcome to the paradox of time, when past and present become one, and history is actually changed.
We've got an incredible opportunity here. We know where all the mistakes are going to be made for the next 40 years, and you've got the power to correct them.
The final countdown.